Welcome to the first side-by-side race on the Friday of the Henley Women's Regatta. It is an absolutely beautiful day here in the seat of the Oxfordshire countryside, and I'm delighted to be joined by two very talented young ladies. Zoe de Toledo, former Olympic silver medalist in the GB Women's 8, and Jo Brown, a former Oxford lightweight, here in the commentary box. And if you look onto our live pictures, which are showing the crews just coming down out the shadows of Temple Island, you will see an opening heat of what looks like the championship doubles to me, and it is contested between the University of Exeter on the Berkshire station and Cambridge University Women's Boat Club on the Buckinghamshire station. And I think as I look at those two crews coming down the course, it looks like maybe Cambridge have the slightest of advantages. But I think it's going to be Zoe who's joining me first. Zoe, delighted to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Any racing you're looking forward to today?
I'm looking forward. Well, I'm just looking forward to see how the new event system's working, because obviously this is the first year of it, and last year I think I was in the middle of exams, so I couldn't come down. So actually, I'm really interested to see how the new system is working, and how it's going to change the way that events happen. I think it's going to be great to see. I think it's just great that the regatta's making those changes and is going ahead and trying new things.
Absolutely moving in the right direction. I tell you what, these two crews on the course at the moment are certainly moving in the right direction as they come past our little commentary booth at the barrier. It looks like Cambridge, who are slugging it along there on the Berkshire station, or even the Buckinghamshire station, beg my pardon, have around a half a length, maybe 3/4 of a length lead as they come past us. But it looks like a pretty dynamic crew, that Cambridge outfit.
Yeah, they look a little bit more settled, I'd say. They look like they're kind of stretching out and finding their stride a bit more, whereas Exeter look like they're sort of really trying to pile on the pressure there to make sure that they stay up on Cambridge's stern. But certainly a hard-fought race. Really good to see one of these first side-by-side races. Great start to the regatta.
Yeah, truly producing the goods. And I think Cambridge might have just put on a little squeeze there. They've edged out to just about clear water over the University of Exeter. So I would expect Cambridge now, with every stroke, they're starting to just move away a little bit more. And I think as you look at those drone shots, it does appear to be Cambridge who have control of this race. So we'll move back to the start for a second heat of the Championship Double Sculls. Contested between Cork Boat Club from Ireland on the Berkshire station and Leander Club, home favourites, on the Buckinghamshire station. Of course, Leander, Zoe, I believe you used to represent Leander.
Yes, absolutely.
Happy to see those girls in action.
Yeah, and they look like they've had a massive resurgence this year in terms of the number of club women that they have. So they've got a big entry here, doubles, fours, quads, I think, as well. So be interesting to see. Looks like one of these crews is having a little bit of trouble with the steering. They're coming quite close together. Yeah,
absolutely. Maybe the umpire will have to get involved here. Certainly if they impede Leander, but it does look like Leander have control of the race at this stage.
Yeah, again, much like the Cambridge crew, the Leander crew just look a little bit more settled. They look like they've stretched out and got onto a bit more of a chunky race pace there. But then both crews really still, as they come into this wind, are going to have to stay sharp and make sure they stay switched on.
It does look like the conditions playing a little part in today. It looks like it's hard work at the moment. I have to say, when that Cambridge crew came past a little earlier, that didn't look like the easiest of sculls on what is a pretty picture-perfect Oxford afternoon. But here we go as they start to approach us in our commentary booth. Leander, quite a low rate of striking, actually, in what I'd describe as control of the race, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right there. They look like they're sitting pretty comfortably and they're ready to react at anything that might come back at them. But this is Henley. You never know what's going to happen, and you've got to be very switched on to what the boat behind you's doing, even if you think you're comfortably ahead.
I think you also wonder on the Henley stretch, notorious, of course, for the difficulty in steering occasionally. How much of an impact will that wayward steering have had on the Cork crew? Because they came right across at the beginning of the race, and since then have struggled to really regain the momentum.
It's always really difficult to say, because it's such a difficult thing to measure, really, how much effect it does have, the steering. I think obviously it can be very disruptive just to your rhythm and your pattern about what you're doing. And as coxes, we obviously try and steer as little as possible, because that the rudder, the way the rudder works is it acts as a brake, and you don't want to use a brake very often when you're trying to go as fast as possible. So it definitely is disruptive. In fact, I was talking to a lot of coxes this morning about the time trial, about whether to steer straight down one side or whether to move so that you've got the favourable conditions, because you're going against the stream. So there's times when you want to be on, you want to be as far out of the centre of the river as possible. And actually, I think on a day like today, there's not much stream. The conditions aren't too bad, and actually just going in a straight line gives your rowers a better row than searching out a tiny bit of faster water. But then a lot of different people had different opinions, so always difficult things to tell.
No, I think you're completely right, and actually having sort of had a bit of experience in the bow seat of quads, it is always a case that every little jink on the rudder, you feel the boat actually slow underneath your momentum. But no danger of that happening to Leander at this stage. They have established complete control over this heat of the championship doubles. They're several lengths up on the crew from Ireland. Good to see such fantastic support from foreign countries, people coming across to race in Henley Women's Regatta, probably the premier female event on the rowing spectrum, I would say, in the world at the moment. And I think it's a record entry this year. We've got crews from as far afield as Mexico.
Yeah.
Which is a testament to how much the regatta's grown in the last few years.
Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, looking at those shots. Does look very impressive from Leander, and I think they'll be the crew to watch. They certainly look a little bit more dynamic than Cambridge, who I believe won the last race. So I think we'll look back to the start. And speaking of Cambridge, we've got another Cambridge crew in action here in our third heat of the championship doubles. It's the A crew from Cambridge, University Women's Boat Club, of course, winners of the boat race this year, and they're racing at Reading University on the Buckinghamshire station. Much like
the other crew, they're really, really dynamic off the start. They're really punchy with the legs. Both crews actually have both had dynamic starts. And again, going back to talking about steering, you can see there Cambridge look like they're struggling. And like you say, it is disruptive. You never know what it's going to cause, if it's just going to make people struggle with, mentally how they're doing. But it does look like that Cambridge crew is struggling to stay straight. In fact, it looks like they're veering now slightly over towards the Reading crew.
It's quite interesting actually seeing Cambridge sculling at Henley Women's Regatta, because of course they sweep all year round in preparation for the boat race, and they're actually performing pretty well in the scull crews. You sort of think, how many of these athletes maybe were scullers before they joined Cambridge and returned to their roots perhaps?
Yeah, or is it actually much more straightforward to swap between the two than people like to make out, I think if you're good at one, you can usually do the other, with a few notable exceptions.
Absolutely. I think a good sculler often makes a good rower. I'm not always convinced about the other way around, but certainly a good sculler tends to make a good rower. And
the scullers tend to say that, I notice.
It happens to be the case, to be fair. But it's actually funny, Reading University, of course, became an all-sculling, I think the only all-sculling university in the country a couple of years ago.
Yeah, an interesting decision, because actually they had some quite strong sweep rowing there, but they decided that they wanted to focus on one thing only, which is an interesting idea, and see how it pays off for them.
Well, that's the question, isn't it? Proof's in the pudding, and whether or not it pays dividends, it certainly isn't at the moment. And as we look down, I think that's Paula Vesselman in the stroke seat. She was in the winning Cambridge crew this year in the boat race. I think they won by, some lengths over Oxford, and in the bow seat, Emma Andrews, formerly of Putney High School, and rode at the Coupe in 2016, if my memory serves me correctly. So a lot of sculling pedigree in that crew, and I think once again, that looks like a pretty much done and dusted affair, although never say never. The barrier's just approaching the two crews, and I think Cambridge rather have perhaps a length and a half, 2 lengths over Reading University.